Welcome to UBG Bites. So, what's got us buzzing today? We're ripping into some seriously mind-bending research. There's this paper out of Tsinghua and Beijing Normal University. It's all about how large language models, the AIs like ChatGPT and Bard that everyone's talking about, are fundamentally shaking up the entire field of psychology. You might be thinking, hold on, what do these advanced algorithms have to do with the intricate workings of the human mind? Well, let me tell you, it's a hell of a lot more profound than you'd probably expect. Our mission for you today is to cut straight through the academic noise, pull out the absolute juiciest, most surprising insights, and help you truly grasp what this means for understanding, well, us.
Exactly. And this isn't just, another cool tech development. It really feels like a fundamental reevaluation of how we even approach studying human cognition and behavior. Psychology has gone through various theoretical transformations over the decades, right? And it feels like AI, especially these sophisticated language models, is opening up entirely new research avenues. We're going to dig into how these models are transforming psychological research, looking at their uncanny ability to model human thought patterns, decision-making, even social behavior, and crucially, they're becoming powerful new tools for researchers themselves. But like any disruptive technology, there are serious technical snags and ethical dilemmas we absolutely have to unpack. The goal here is really to figure out how to responsibly leverage these incredible advantages while being acutely aware of the potential pitfalls. So yeah, let's get into it.
All right, before we all deep into the psychology angle, let's quickly get on the same page about what these LLMs actually are. I mean, we hear terms like GPT-4, LMA, Claude thrown around daily. But what's the core essence that makes them such a game changer, not just for tech, but for sciences like psychology? What makes them a paradigm shift?
Yeah, it's a good question because it's easy to get lost in the jargon. Forget the nitty-gritty of the architecture for just a second. At their core, LLMs are essentially colossal pattern recognition machines. That's maybe the simplest way to put it. They've been trained on, unimaginably vast amounts of human language. We're talking trillions of words, entire libraries, basically the internet itself. And this process isn't just about memorizing facts. It's about learning the relationships between words, concepts, ideas, contexts, sort of the statistical pattern. So when they get a prompt, they're not thinking in a human sense, not really, but they're incredibly good at predicting the next most plausible sequence of words based on all that training data. And this scale, this sheer size, leads to what we call emergent capabilities, these new abilities that just sort of pop up as the models get bigger and more complex. It's almost like they suddenly develop skills they weren't explicitly programmed for. And this allows them to process high-level semantics, which, fascinatingly, starts to deepen our insights into human cognition itself. For instance, LLMs often show this balance between rapid intuitive responses and more logical processing, pretty much like humans do in what psychologists call dual process theory, where we might react quickly on gut feeling or, take time for deliberate thought.
So it's not just word salad generators. They're learning patterns that are surprisingly mirroring how our own brains seem to operate, at least in certain ways.
That's kind of wild, and that's why they're so useful for studying our minds. Is that the connection?
Precisely, yeah. This ability to generate human-like text and perform tasks that feel a lot like human cognition, even solving complex analogical problems at levels comparable to people, offers an entirely new computational lens. It means we can start asking questions about human intelligence by observing how these models reason or understand.
Mhm.
Take GPT-3, for instance. It's actually outperformed humans in some vignette-based tasks. And it's even shown mental abilities in false belief tasks, understanding that someone can hold a belief that's different from reality.
Wow.
That's key for theory of mind. And it performs comparably to maybe a 7-year-old child on those.
Wow.
Which isn't just a parlor trick, that's a whole new way to probe these really fundamental cognitive processes. Okay, all right, so these LLMs are clearly more than just fancy search engines, way more. But where are psychologists actually using them right now? What are the concrete, real-world applications across the various branches of psychology? From how we think individually to how we act in groups.
Yeah, the review paper really details their impact across 4 key branches. First, in cognitive and behavioral psychology. It's a big one. Here, LLMs are being used to simulate human cognitive processes. Think perception, memory, thinking, decision-making. Researchers have actually fine-tuned an LLM to predict human behavior in tasks it's never even seen before.
Really?
Yeah, which is a big deal because it means they could act as these incredibly versatile, generalist cognitive models. That GPT-3 example we just talked about, outperforming humans in something like a multi-armed bandit task.
Where you have to figure out the best rewards.
Exactly. Or those false belief tasks. It shows they're not just mimicking, they're exhibiting something kind of akin to human intuitive thinking, and even our cognitive errors, our biases. And beyond pure simulation, LLMs are proving practical as tools for, like, experimental design. Think DALL-E 2 generating incredibly realistic visual stimuli for studies on public attitudes. That saves researchers immense time and resources.
That's fascinating, being able to predict behavior and even generate the stimuli for the tests. But what about something as sensitive as mental health? How are they being used there?
Yeah, that brings us to clinical and counseling psychology, which is, as you can imagine, a super sensitive area. It needs a lot of caution. LMs are being explored for psychological assessment and maybe even intervention. They show some promise in recognizing emotional states and even performing complex evaluations, like assessing suicide risk or predicting schizophrenia prognosis. GPT-4, BARD, and Claude, for example, have aligned pretty closely with professional benchmarks for treated schizophrenia cases in some studies. Though interestingly, GPT 3.5 was found overly pessimistic sometimes. Now, for interventions, LLMs could offer scalable, personalized mental health support, maybe crafting therapeutic strategies tailored to an individual. But let me be crystal clear here. The source heavily emphasizes the critical need for safety, privacy, and most importantly, that LLMs absolutely should not replace human psychotherapists.
Right. That seems crucial.
It is. They're a tool, maybe a powerful one, but not a human replacement, especially when it comes to the nuances of empathy, lived experience, the therapeutic relationship.
Yeah, that's a huge point. You can't just swap out a human therapist for a chatbot. Not yet, anyway. Maybe never completely. What about how kids learn and grow? That's a whole different ballgame, right?
It is. Totally different context. Next up is educational and developmental psychology. LLMs are proving invaluable here for studying human developmental processes, like how kids acquire theory of mind or develop emotional reasoning. That GPT-4 achieving 75% accuracy in false belief tasks similar to a 6-year-old. It means we can model and maybe probe the stages of human development in a completely new way. But they're also revolutionizing actual learning, not just studying it. Imagine a GPT-3-powered AI tutor. One study showed it improved academic performance by up to 15 percentile points.
15 percentile points just from an AI tutor.
That's what the study found. It's not just helpful, it's potentially transformative for personalized learning experiences and boosting student motivation.
That's insane. It's like having a super tutor in your pocket. Okay, so that's learning. What about how we all interact? Society, culture.
All right, so finally, we've got social and cultural psychology. LLMs are helping researchers understand how individuals are shaped by their social and cultural surroundings. Interestingly, they often reflect typical human cognitive biases. And one study even found LLMs consistently favored Eastern holistic thinking patterns, which is fascinating.
Really? Not just Western biases.
Apparently not always, which suggests they pick up on diverse patterns in the data. They can simulate social interactions, even replicating results from classic, sometimes controversial experiments like Milgram's electroshock studies. And they can act as proxies for human participants in research, demonstrating nuanced, demographically aligned biases. On the more practical side, in IO psych industrial organizationals, they're being used for things like employee selection, improving workplace productivity. ChatGPT, for example, has been shown to reduce task completion time by 40% and improve output quality by 18% in certain writing tasks.
It's pretty wild to think about an AI acting like a human, sometimes even outperforming us in specific areas, all while also helping us study humans. It just screams efficiency, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But that makes me wonder about the day-to-day for researchers. How are these models actually helping psychologists get their actual work done? Are they just fancy calculators or more?
Oh, they're absolutely transforming the nitty-gritty, way more than calculators. LLMs are becoming incredibly versatile research tools, drastically boosting efficiency and maybe even objectivity in some ways. Think of them as hyper-competent research assistants, maybe. For literature review and meta-analysis, they can automate the sheer drudgery. I mean, the painful parts. Imagine cutting weeks of work down to days by having an AI summarize literature, extract data points, or even generate statistical code for analysis.
Okay, that's huge.
It's a massive game changer for academic productivity.
So no more endless hours drowning in research papers, manually sifting through thousands of abstracts. Sounds like a damn dream.
Pretty much, yeah, or at least significantly less of it. And for hypothesis generation and experimental design, LLMs can literally help generate new hypotheses from vast bodies of scientific literature. They can make inferences you might miss, help clarify conclusions. They can quickly churn out text-based materials for experiments, stimuli, test items, which seriously optimizes the whole research process from the start. Now, regarding experimental subjects, this is where it gets tricky, and there's a big debate. But LLMs can simulate some human behaviors, allowing researchers to test theories and hypotheses in a controlled virtual environment. Some folks suggest they could even serve as substitutes for human participants in very specific contexts to save time and cost, especially when human participation just isn't feasible.
Like maybe really early pilot testing.
Exactly. But this comes with some pretty strong caveats about rigorous validation and knowing the limitations. You wouldn't just swap out real people without serious due diligence.
Yeah, you definitely wouldn't want to replace all human participants just yet, or maybe ever for certain things. Still, the idea of a virtual lab for quick tests is pretty cool. What about crunching all that data afterwards, especially text data?
Exactly. For the data analysis, they are incredibly powerful. They can efficiently analyze massive amounts of textual data, think social media posts by the millions, interview transcripts, open-ended survey responses, to gain insights into human behavior and emotions at an unprecedented scale, things we just couldn't do before. They can identify subtle patterns and psychological structures across multiple languages, even generating psychological profiles from social media data, potentially. And finally, in scholarly communication, LLMs are lending a serious hand, helping with academic writing, generating abstracts, maybe even aiding in early-stage peer review by organizing and analyzing huge amounts of literature much faster.
Okay.
Though, obviously, the quality and authenticity of that output remain critical considerations. You still need the human expert in the loop.
So they're like super-powered research grad students who don't need coffee or have emotional breakdowns. Okay, maybe they have digital breakdowns sometimes. That's incredibly handy, but come on, there's got to be a catch, right? What are the big headaches, the limitations, the real-world messes, the ethical minefields that psychologists and researchers absolutely have to watch out for?
Okay, yeah. This is where we need to be really grounded and critical. While LLMs show impressive performance, it's vital to remember their output is fundamentally sophisticated pattern matching. It's not genuine understanding or consciousness. One major technical issue is the black box problem. You hear that a lot. LLM's internal working mechanisms are often opaque. We see the impressive output, but how they got there can be a total mystery.
Right, you can't always trace the thought process.
It's exactly. They might excel at formal linguistic tasks, grammar, structure, but totally fail at functional competence, meaning they don't truly grasp real-world language use, context, nuance. They can be great at analogical reasoning in some tests, but then shockingly bad at something seemingly simple like spatial reasoning. It's patchy. And then there's the big one. They suffer from hallucinations.
Hallucination.
Yeah, literally fabricating information that sounds totally plausible, completely confident, but is just made up, wrong. They also lack true meta-knowledge, knowing what they don't know, or any genuine curiosity.
Hallucinations, making stuff up out of thin air, that's a huge problem if you're trying to do serious, factual research or, God forbid, offer medical or psychological advice based on it.
It's a massive challenge for validity and trust, absolutely. And then you hit the deeper ethical issues, like bias propagation. This is unavoidable right now. LLMs inherit and amplify biases embedded in their training data. And this is crucial because, as the paper notes, a lot of that training data is predominantly weird, Western, educated, industrialized, rich, and democratic.
Right, which isn't representative of most of the world.
Exactly. It unfortunately overlooks the vast tapestry of global psychological diversity. So if an AI is reflecting primarily those biases, it can lead to skewed research findings, unfair assessments in clinical settings, maybe, or even just reinforce dominant viewpoints in a way that creates prejudice or discrimination. If you're building a psychological profile based on this, you have to be acutely aware of that inherent skew.
That's a really big deal. If the AI itself is biased because of the data it's fed, then any research or advice it provides could be fundamentally skewed, and that directly affects people in the real world, potentially worsening existing inequities. That's scary.
It's a significant, unavoidable risk we have to manage. And this ties directly into misinformation and academic integrity. In education and research, LLMs can generate stuff that's inconsistent, contradictory, or just plain false information presented confidently. This brings up major concerns about academic integrity, students using it to cheat, sure, but also researchers unintentionally plagiarizing or misattributing concepts generated by the AI. It raises this fascinating but thorny question. If an LLM generates something false or biased, who's actually responsible?
The user, the developer.
The data.
Exactly. Where does the buck stop?
That's not clear yet. And despite all the human-like text, the underlying reality is that LLMs often do not truly understand the content. and may generate absurd or misleading responses. They just lack true human-like cognitive and psycholinguistic features in many complex tasks, like generating really deep, long-form, coherent analogies.
Okay, so they're incredibly powerful tools, amazing potential, but they're clearly not perfect, definitely not human. It sounds like researchers really need to be transparent, incredibly careful, and frankly pretty skeptical about what these models produce, verifying everything. So where does all this leave us? What does the future look like for LLMs and psychology? Where are we headed?
Right, the future is really all about careful integration and fundamentally responsibility. That's the watchword. A significant direction is multimodal LLMs. This is a big area of development. It means combining the text-based LLMs we know with visual and auditory information, not just written words. The goal is to create far more nuanced models of human emotions, behaviors, complex mental states. Imagine an LLM that can see what you see and hear what you hear alongside processing text.
Okay, that adds whole new layers of data.
Huge layers. Another really exciting frontier is neuroimaging integration. This means using actual brain data from things like fMRI or EEG to inform how LLM architectures are built. This could potentially bridge the gap between these abstract AI models and the actual biological brain, creating more accurate representations of human language and thought.
Bridging AI and the actual brain, that's some serious sci-fi level stuff right there, like something out of a movie.
It's certainly pushing the boundaries, yeah. We're also seeing the potential rise of personalized LLMs. These would be tailored models created from an individual's own personal data, think maybe social media posts, anonymized medical records, data from wearable devices, to provide potentially highly accurate and relevant insights into their state of mind, especially valuable in clinical contexts, maybe.
That hugely problematic for privacy.
Immediately. This throws us right back to those crucial privacy and ethical challenges we just discussed. It's a double-edged sword. But the overall emphasis for the future isn't really about LLMs replacing humans. Not at all. It's about human-AI collaboration, combining human expertise, our empathy, our critical thinking, with the scalability and computational power of LLMs to create entirely new diagnostic methods, new intervention tools, things we couldn't imagine before.
Okay, so it's not about LLMs taking over, but about them becoming really powerful partners, provided we build them right and use them smartly. With guardrails, it's kind of like learning a new language, maybe, but this time it's the language of AI meaningfully interacting with the human mind. So what's the big takeaway from all this for you, the listener? Just trying to get a handle on it.
Yeah, the big takeaway. Crucially, it comes down to ethical AI development. That's paramount. This means ensuring LLMs are designed and deployed with privacy, fairness, and responsibility woven into their very fabric from the beginning. It demands transparently disclosing what a model can and cannot do, its limitations, constantly verifying outputs against human experts, deliberately using diverse training data to try and reduce those biases we talked about, and in sensitive areas like mental health, always limiting their use to assist rather than replace human judgment and empathy. That cannot be stressed enough.
Assist, not replace. Got it.
It's a clear call for interdisciplinary collaboration, too. Psychologists, computer scientists, linguists, ethicists, all working together to build these ethical, robust LLMs. The core message is definitely one of augmentation, not replacement. LLMs can profoundly enhance our understanding of human communication, thought processes, behaviors, potentially leading to more comprehensive theories of mind. However, the human judgment, the empathy, the ethical reasoning of trained professionals, that remains absolutely irreplaceable, especially in sensitive domains like mental health. So as you continue to navigate this rapidly evolving landscape, maybe consider this thought. If LLMs can learn to mimic human-like cognition and behavior so effectively, just through pattern recognition alone, what does that really tell us about the fundamental nature of our own intelligence? And what new, maybe unsettling, maybe exciting questions does that provoke about what it truly means to understand in this age of increasingly advanced AI?
Food for thought indeed. Right, you've just gotten a major download on the cutting edge of AI and psychology. Go forth and ponder. Thanks for tuning in.